Hello. I've been asked to say something about diet and mediumship. Well, the fact is that we have to try and be as good as we can be, and this is my sincere thought, in order to bring through the very best and the highest that we can for those to whom we are responsible for relaying messages from the spirit world. If we ourselves are full of base thoughts and actions, then because we know that like attracts like, we are going to attract to ourselves baser spirit, and therefore not give good information and uplifting information and comfort to those who are suffering. I sincerely believe that we have to be as good as we can be. I don't believe that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think the road to heaven is paved with good intentions. And yes, we may fall short of our ambition to be that good, but nevertheless the intention is known and will be rewarded, if you like, if you think in terms of reward and punishment, that is. But you see, we owe it, mediums owe it to other people to try and attract the best possible information for them from the realms of light, and not from anything that is too near the earth plane and maybe buzzing around trying to make mischief. This, I suppose, is what you could say is where some of the horror stories about mediumship come from, and why some religious orthodoxies proscribe it, because they see it as a work of devils or demons. Don't forget that the word demon was actually a messenger. It didn't mean horrid when it was first spoken. But nevertheless, if people are going to not look after their bodily self and their physicalities, then perhaps their information and communication may not be as good as it should be for other people to whom they relay their communications. Yes, people smoke and drink. This is a fact of life. And yes, people overeat where they can. And they may indulge in other excesses of physicality. Nevertheless, as long as it's everything in moderation, as St. Augustine said so wisely a few hundred years ago, everything in moderation, nothing too much. And if you are going to just take from life that which is offered to you, and if it has some pleasures in it, then why not? But it's the excess that could prove difficult. So again, we're talking about developing mediumship, and what's the best way to ensure that that mediumship, when we do develop it, is accessing the very best spirit information. And a video that I watched that a friend had sent to me, because he asked me if I would say something about diet and mediumship this evening. And I watched the video with increasing, should I say, disbelief, because they were basically selling some mixtures that they said were cleansing. And by cleansing the body with their products, you were going to be much better in your mediumship, if you were a medium, and also it would help you to do all sorts of other things, including lose weight. Now, in the old days, when mediumship was in its infancy, there were fairgrounds and there were people who used to sell what we call snake oil, and a cure-all, and it really seemed to me that this was doing something similar, because really, if we eat a reasonable diet, those of us who have access to that, if we don't overindulge ourselves in food that we know is bad for us, and I won't at this point enter into the argument about whether people should eat flesh of other animals other than themselves, of course, whether that's acceptable in a spiritual way. Again, we all have free will and freedom of choice, and I can't get into that argument at the moment. Nevertheless, as long as one isn't over excessive, then I think that we should be all right in terms of mediumship, particularly when it comes to losing weight. I think that some people are supposed to be larger than other people. It wouldn't do if we were all the same, would it? And as long as people are healthy, that's the main thing. And I think for people to worry too much about their self-image, to the extent that they're willing to pay lots of money out for things to sort of make them slimmer, or that say that it will cleanse them. I always was told that plenty of water would help in the cleansing department. And I think that to James, who asked me to talk about diet and mediumship, I would just say to you, do not drink before you go on a platform or give a message to somebody. If you're going to link into spirit, your own guides and helpers should tell you not to take on board alcohol, or perhaps even sully one's lungs with anything other than fresh air. And as far as eating is concerned, before you give communication from spirit, I would say that a coach's maxim, which was mine, is not to eat for 2 hours before, because if your body is busy digesting food, perhaps the blood that's required to go to your brain won't be there, it'll be in your stomach. However, on the subject of diet and mediumship, I think, as I said before, I think St. Augustine had it right, nothing too much. Well, that takes care of that then, and hopefully I've saved you a few bobs on buying all sorts of various remedies that may make you cleaner. Now then, how do we develop our mediumship? A lot of mediums say that they don't bother with books. Well, I did. I did what everybody else is supposed to do, which is sit and meditate and be in circle and learn some discipline, some spiritual discipline, and find out how best to relay information from the spirit to those down here who are still living here. And during that early learning period, I understood that I should, in fact, try and learn as much as I could. And you can't expect just one person to teach you everything. And books are only everybody's thoughts put into black and white onto paper. Or if you can't see to read, or you can't read, there are plenty of audio tapes on the subject. All sorts of different tapes have been made. Mediums have made tapes right from the time when tapes were possible. And I suggest that people do what I did, which is read as much as you can, listen to as much as you can. I used to go on church crawls. I used to go and watch mediums and see how they did it and their presentations and compare, and in that way I learned. So as you know, I'm sure, I wrote a book myself. I'm in the process of writing another with extra information in it. I'll lean over and I just happen to have one here, which is here. Oops, back to front, of course. The Spiritualist Handbook, I called it, this one. And it has lots of things in it that are worth reading, I think, are worth hearing about. For instance, who inhabits the spirit world? You know, that's a good one, isn't it? And I've said this in my book. I'll read you a few lines from it. For those who have led distinctly unspiritual lives on earth, oh, do you remember what we were saying? Unpleasant conditions beckon. It is considered generally in spiritualist terms that these people are left to the companionship of their own kind and to the reflection of their own evil actions and thoughts. And living on in such abhorrent conditions, constructed for themselves as they made their wicked way in their earth life, they may become revolted, and so their soul institutes a struggle to free them. Previously imprisoned by low-frequency materialistic impulses, the effort to break out stimulates their spirit, and a glimmer of spiritual light becomes apparent. Many adjustments have to be made and drastic changes undertaken, supervised by more highly evolved beings, before any spiritual progress can be substantiated. For some, and we all have our own list, this process of progress will take an eternity. Well, of course, we're talking about people who have been very, very, very wicked and awful to other human beings in their lifetimes. But there you are, you see. How did we know that I was going to open it at that page?